All right, we're still talking ANC policy conference, and of course we are now joined by Mmamoloko Kubayi in her capacity as, of course, an ANC NEC member, also of course heading economic transformation. Thank you so much for your time, Ms. Kubayi, and good morning to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us here.
It's great to have you here, and I want to take it back to February, if that could be my starting point of our conversation. I understand you were at the Vembe region addressing organizational renewal and revival. What was that important for the ANC to do?
No, it was in February. We were actually not, it was focused on feedback on the elections and engaging structures to understand what has happened and also reflect upon the outcomes of the 2021 elections. So, yeah, it was quite interesting, quite feedback from members of the ground, reflecting about what needs to be done in the organization, how leadership needs to assist in conduct. I mean, even in that time, there was issues around, I remember very well publicly, that members of the organization there were raising that even national leaders, as part of image, managing the brand and image of the ANC, they needed to conduct themselves very well and stop fighting even on Twitter, for example. It was some quite interesting and a reflection around what they believe to be the challenges of the organization from their own constituency. So it was assisting. We were doing that across the country, led by election team.
Yeah, I mean, those are sound concerns, I suppose, from, from ground members on the ground that they're raising, because we did see the electoral decline with the ANC. From your perspective, what do you think informs it?
Look, there's quite a number of factors when we reflect around that, and I think the head of elections, Comrade Balula, can be able to elaborate more, because they've done intense work in that area. One of the issues was around we didn't have enough time to prepare for the elections. If you noted that previously, for example, ANC would have various phases in preparing towards elections. So this one was cut short by COVID, and as well because of COVID-19 regulations, you had restricted time in terms of campaigning and all those things. But also the process, we introduced the system of taking candidates to public meetings that they needed to be voted in. Others were happy about it, others were not happy about it. It resulted in a lot of disputes that resulted in a report by Ntate Motlanthe in saying these are the areas where there's been weaknesses. So there's been quite a lot of issues. Again, those were internal. Again, service delivery issues where South Africans were saying to us, we don't see services. Potholes are increasing, water is not provided, housing, all those things.
Right.
Service delivery. Again, it was part of the feedback when we look at our street sheets, because door-to-door was happening. Members of the ANC were given that. You look at issues around corruption and the issues that continue to come back. Stop the infighting and focus on what needs to be done for South Africans. And those are some of the feedback that were given.
I'm sure you would agree with me, Ms. Kubayi, that I suppose one of the opinions that divides the ANC has to be the step-aside resolution. How do you think that resolution also informs economic transformation for the ANC?
Look, sorry, my throat. For us as the ANC, we took a decision in the last conference that we needed to renew the organization. Now, part of renewal of the organization meant that we need to do things differently. And that's why there was an issue about integrity commission, that should I have anything that I need that would impugn or impact on the image and the brand of the ANC as a leader or a member, then I needed either voluntarily to appear before the integrity commission and explain myself, or even they will summon me. And that has been quite of the work that has been done to try and renew the organization so that we respond to what society has said to us. Our electorate has said to us that we need ethical leaders who would be able to convince us that they are not about themselves but about the people of South Africa. And that's why the issue around step aside, it more emanates from members of society who complain to say, but you guys, more than anything as ANC, we are worried that this is becoming an organization of more corrupt people. And that's why the integrity and the image of the organization got affected. Hence the decision was that, okay, let's look at the guidelines. How do we established guidelines that can help us protect the image of the ANC. And therefore, that's why we said anyone who's indicted, anyone who's appearing before a court is charged, before a magistrate or a judge, will have to step aside. And the process as well with that is that once you have stepped aside, after some time, when your case does not get concluded, you have a right to approach a structure, whether it's the NEC, a province, to request a review of your step aside. So it has protection mechanism so that it's not abused as well. So yeah, that is part of dealing with managing the integrity and managing the image of the organization, and it's part of the renewal process.
Right. I mentioned economic transformation because I know that you head, that committee within the ANC, and I know it's quite obvious where we are, the state of our economy right now in the country. We're seeing the energy crisis also influencing, the failure of certain, businesses, the inflation rates that we're seeing going up and down. How much of a priority is that in terms of addressing it through policy for the ANC?
Look, with our policy proposals and the document that delegates will be engaging with from today over this weekend, and obviously the engagements are this weekend, but the adoption of the resolutions will be in December. So even beyond here, we'll continue to engage and refine the document. But on the energy issue, we do understand that I think everybody who's here, a delegate, would have been impacted upon by load shedding. So we understand that this is one of the areas I believe would have more attention by delegates. And the issue around this is how are we going to stop the load shedding, because it affects their lives, but it affects businesses. It's contributing to unemployment, it's contributing to the lack of growth in the country. So you can't talk about growth of the sectors and growth of the economy when you still have load shedding, because it does the opposite to that. And that's why the address by the president is more critical. But also what has been previously said. President talked about the issue of intervention in the economy to stop the load shedding now, which assists us, and therefore we're looking at long-term policy from our side to say, how do we ensure that there's sustainability in terms of our energy? One of the areas we have had President talking about energy company number 2, for example. And the reason, the logic around that, and we'll be canvassing conference to be able to start supporting and mechanisms so that at December it's one of the things that is adopted, is that one, when you look at it, is that we've put all our eggs in one basket, which is Eskom currently. Now, when Eskom faced challenges, then we were left as government having no alternative. And that's why energy company number 2 is critical. And as we are dealing with separation of Eskom between generation, transmission and distribution. One is that on the generation part, you still want to, because we've started the process of doing the PPPs, bringing private sectors to come and assist us in the energy generation. But because we can't depend only on private sector as a state, we have a developmental mandate. That's why energy companies must assist us as South Africa to be able to still fulfill our obligation in terms of developmental mandate. Provision for those who are vulnerable and members of our society who can't afford to get the basic free electricity energy, because it's one of the human rights that we've got to be able to provide.
Well, that's all the time I had with you, and I appreciate you, of course, coming to speak to us. Energy definitely being top on the agenda, as we've heard, of course, from ANC NEC member Mmamoloko Kubayi. So other issues that will be addressed today, well, she says they will go beyond the weekend, addressing, of course, these policies until, of course, adoption is taken